Hey dude. Okay, so yeah, okay, well I'm just gonna keep making these recordings you know, because I keep getting stuck, I mean this stuff is so fucking hard, and I don't know. I think it's weird that I just graft until I have something to show I've done I've been grafting for about 2 hours now on this thing, and I'm stuck, and I've got some progress, some stuff still fucked up, and I don't know. I think it would be really useful if I just told you what's going on. All the problems I've had, all the stuff that I've figured out. I think it's weird, like coming to you and saying, "Okay, I figured all this stuff out." I don't know. It just feels like a dick showing contest or something, and that's really not what I'm interested in. Um, Plus, if me showing you all the fuck ups that I've made, all the stuff that I've tried, it keeps you up to breast with like anything that I've realized that you haven't seen, and if there's stuff that if there's stuff that you've seen that I haven't, you can let me know, and then I won't have to just fucking go through all this fucking pain. Okay. Um. Okay, what's going on? Okay. Well, okay. The first thing I want to talk about is I sent you an email saying that I figured out how to do serialized properties, which may be a bit overstating it. All I really figured out was this. Okay. So if I click on this chain object, here there's two path object. There's a path object, a slabs object that you can select. Um, if you click on it, what it does, it just lists all the game components in the scene that have the path script attached to it. Remember from before that have this chain script, a path script, a point script. In order to define a game object as that type, all you do is you add a script to it. Based on, I mean, that's how I'm going about it. Okay, and it works great. So you click here. I mean, and the funny thing is that what you're seeing here is it's just like the functionality that you would normally get if you just set a path member variable as public and didn't fuck with the inspector. But I'm doing all custom inspectors. So in order to do this, um, the way I did it was with serialized properties. Something I don't really understand, but I understand that if you want to undo and all that stuff, it took me a long time to figure out how to do it. Okay, where am I? Chain editor. Okay, yeah. Again, sorry if you know all this stuff, but I just want to go through it in case you don't. To make an edit, it has to be under the editor window. I mean, it has to be under the editor folder. You can't choose that. And then I'm just calling a chain editor as a convention. It has to extend either editor or editor window. Then at the top you have to put down a custom editor type of, and then what the script is. So yeah, that's another thing that's interesting about this that I didn't realize initially, is that I'm not actually doing a custom inspector. I'm actually just doing this custom tiny little bit here. I only realized this afterwards when I added different components, had the script add components to itself, because I'm not actually editing here. Again, you probably realized this before, but I only realized it now. So so all the stuff that I'm doing when I do an on inspector GUI is just this area here with this drop down, which is pretty fucking cool actually. Okay, anyway. Okay, so the first thing that I do is I define two serialized properties, prop path and slabs prop. Okay, and that they just point to these two guys, the path object and the slabs object, right? So I don't know if you've read, but serialized properties is like serialization is like a C# thing I've discovered. And the whole point of it is serialization, which is converting a class into a bunch of bytes. So the idea is to like store it out to a database, and to copy it to a clipboard. That's what the MSDN doc said. And and then I was thinking, like, well, what are you storing? It's like, well, the only thing you can really store if you serialize something, a class, is the values of all the members. You can either store the values out, or you can store the links. So it's like an object hierarchy. Anyway, I mean, that's just what I remember. Okay, so the first thing is on enable. So I've recently discovered, I didn't know this when I wrote this, but on enable, I just copied someone else, but on enable actually happens when the script gets compiled. And I'll show you now how I figured that out because of what I'm trying to figure out tonight. But okay, in on enable you say serialized object. I don't know what the fuck that means. I mean, it's a member variable. What the fuck? Where's it come from? I have no idea. Defined property path. So I'm assuming that serialized object is like a serialized version of the current game object, which is the chain editor script component. No. Fuck. It must be. Oh, it's of this. The chain. Oh fuck. Yes. Yes. Okay. Sorry, I'm getting confused. So. Okay. I mean, if I typed in game object here, I don't actually type game object here anyway here. It's confusing. Yeah, I'm not selecting anything. Serialized object, that's bizarre. Anyway, I could look it up, but I guess I'm in no position to. Anyway, the point, the main line is, okay, so at the top of inspector GUI you have to say serialized object.update. At the bottom you have to say serialized object.apply modified properties. Again, I don't really understand what that does. And here's how I create the field. Okay, so editor GUI layout.property field path prop comma new GUI content path object. Okay, so that just does what the inspector normally does here and puts one of these bad boys down. Lets you click and only select types of this property. Okay, and then here is where you can actually pull out. So this is what took me. This line is what took me so long to figure out before. Slabs equals slabs prop dot object reference value as slabs. Okay, so all slabs is a just an empty script like this, right? Just an empty script, and the whole point of slabs is to define what this object is. So this slabs object has a slabs script. I know it's bizarre that the script and the object names are the same, but most of the case we're only going to need one instance of everything. So there's a chain script that's connected to the chain object, a path script that's connected to the path object. All the points have point script attached to them, and then the slabs has a slab script, and then I also have slabs, each with a slab script. So there's a slab script and a slab script. I know it's confusing. Thought about how to fix that, but anyway. So okay, so the whole point again is when you click here, the whole point of this code here, okay, it says, okay, the whole point of this line says, okay, has the guy actually selected some game object in the scene that has a slabs component attached to it, right? That's what this does. It just pulls it out. It says slabs prop.object reference value as slabs, and that's like a cast. I'm sure you know that. Sorry, I mean, a lot of this stuff I don't know, so I'm sorry if I sound like a dumbass or I sound condescending. I know I keep saying that, but I mean it. Okay, so what next? Okay, if slabs not equals null. Okay, so this is basically just means that the guy hasn't selected a slab. Okay, but if he has, right, which is a slabs component, right, then what it does is it goes slabs.gameObject.getComponents and children slab, which, as you know, all it does is it says, okay, for that game object, give me all the components which have all of the game objects. does it do? Yeah, it gives me all the components of the children game objects. Yeah, all the slab components that are attached to children game objects. Anyway, okay. Then it creates a list of strings with the length of how many you've got. Then it loops through all of them and then adds them to this list. So it creates an array of all the names of these guys. So it should create an array, one called create slab, which shouldn't be create slab, it should be called street lights. Street lights. Right. And then so now I've got an array of all those names and then index. Okay, so what this does, editor GUI layout.popup index names. Okay, so this is the one, this is which one I want to select initially, which I just set to 0, which is the first one. And then what it does is it returns a value. So if I change this, if I actually select, it will set the index. So if I select the second one, it will set index to 1. And here we go, you go over here, you click on chain, and here we go. Click on the drop down, and now we can choose one of those sub guys, right? And I guess the whole point of serialized objects is that I can control C. I can set this to none, and then I can control Z. Oh, and it worked. Look at that. I control Z and it sets it back to what it was before. Okay, so undo actually works now with stuff inside of here. I can select this guy, control Z. Oh, it's not working. No, it's because I always set it to 0. Okay. Anyway, so that's that. That's what I did there, which was like my major breakthrough for the one evening. Okay, on to the next thing, which is my attempt at a major breakthrough for this evening, which is not really going so well. Okay, so what did I want to do? Okay, so what I want to do is start making a fucking mesh, right? So I've been going through a track mesher, trying to understand what's going on. Okay, and I see, the way I see it is that there's 3 main things going on here. There's a mesh filter, there's a mesh, and there is a mesh renderer. Okay, there's a knit mesh. The knit mesh gets the mesh filter component, gets the shared mesh out of it, which I've recently read and understood that you just pull out a copy of the shared mesh. You don't edit it directly, otherwise you'll fuck with the actual thing that you're referencing apparently. What else is there? What's going on? I'm really feeling spaced out now. Okay, so let me show you what I've done. Okay, so this is the way I see it. Okay, we want this chain to, okay, firstly it's going to have its own mesh, right? And it's going to be a single mesh for the whole chain, like all of the bits cobbled together. So far what do we have? We have a path that it's attached to. We have a list of slabs that it selects all of its objects from, right? So so we're not actually going to make copies of the actual slabs underneath the chain. All we're going to do is have references to them. So I'm thinking that the chain object is going to have a subtype called link, and then all link is going to do is point to a slab, like an index or one of the slabs. Okay, and then you have a mesh, which is the actual mesh, the mesh filter, which is where the mesh comes from, and then the mesh renderer. Okay. Okay. Fuck, there's all this other stuff I wanted to talk about, but it's not going to happen. Well, I started by saying on awake, and then inside of on awake, I had functions that said, mesh equals get mesh, and then inside of get mesh, it's like a lazy loader. I'm thinking I'm doing lots of lazy loading, and like, I can make things bulletproof, or it seems like it has the potential. And inside of get mesh, I say, okay, if the mesh is null, then create it, right? And then part of creating a mesh is getting the mesh filter. So I do the same thing with mesh filter. I have a get mesh filter function, and it checks if it's null. And then at the end I said, okay, mesh render equals get mesh renderer, and I tried that and it just fucked out. Like, and it turned out it was because you don't actually know what state the script is in. It's a bizarre thing. Like if I change the script and press enter and save it and then go back to Unity, it turns out that, you know, for one thing, the console just kept getting flooded out. I didn't really know where I was. I didn't know what order in which things were being executed. Then I discovered that on enable, it kept giving me these errors saying that the mesh render exists already, or you know. So what I'm trying to do now, all I'm trying to do this evening, is get this script to render out something, right, using the mesh. You know? So I've got this function here. So inside of get mesh, I've got this function that okay, it says mesh filter equals get mesh filter, mesh filter dot mesh equals new mesh equals mesh filter dot shared mesh, right? And then it says, okay, vertices equals new vector 310, p equals 0 while p is less than 10, vertices p plus plus equals new vector 0 comma random range comma 0, right? So it's just, it should just create some crazy star shape, I guess. This, how would this work? I mean, don't you need to make triangles? I mean, you just have a bunch of vertices, not going to make anything, right? That's probably why I didn't do this right. Shit, I was going to take you through, like... Okay, anyway, so... Okay, so... This is another reason why I'm making these videos. Is good for me. Okay, so on enable kind of gets run before the script compiles. So I found that like using on awake didn't. Oftentimes I would click back in and I wouldn't know whether or not it had. You know, what is being run? Does it run start again? I mean, these are questions that I'm not sure of. Like, if you put something in start and then you change the script and then you go back to Unity and you click, like, is it going to redo everything? Right? That's why the first thing that I did up here was I put a print statement of random.range, you know, just to check when this number changes, because otherwise you don't really know if the console is changing. Is it changing? Is it reloading it? Is it? So now I've discovered that if you put something into on enable, you know, okay, let's just do an experiment here. Okay, so if I say void on awake, right, and then I put this statement in there, and then I comment everything else out. Okay, so what's going to happen? Okay, comment everything out. Just put it into on awake. Dish, dish. Nothing. You see that? You put something into on awake and it doesn't work. Right? Like if I change it, enter, go back to Unity, seems like it changed, but this number didn't change. Do you see that? Now, if I take it out of on awake and I put it into on enable and I go back in, what happens now? Bam, there it is. The number pops up in the middle. Now if I go back to the script, if I just click in it and then I go back to the window, what happens? Nothing. Now if I go back to the script and I just put a space in and I save it out, and I go back to Unity, doof, doof. You see that? There's the number that was there before, and now here's this other number, right? And all this other debug crap is still here, right? So it's very hard to figure out what's going on. Like, where am I? what happened, in what order did it happen. Debugging is really cumbersome. So what I've done, I didn't really know, like I was getting this weird error. Like I wish I had started recording when I got the error so I could show you why I've done all this weird crap. But I've just created this class called trace, and all trace does is it just keeps track of where you are. So I don't know if you're gonna get any use out of this, but okay. So for example, first thing is on enable, lets you kind of do things all over again. So the reason I needed to do this was because I have code that is going to be generating the mesh, and I need to every time we change the pertinent script, it needs to go and regenerate everything, right? So where do you put that? You can't put it on awake. I've just shown it doesn't work. On start wouldn't work either. But on enable will work. On enable will work because it happens when the script compiles. Every time the script compiles, I think, or something like that, on enable. Okay, great. So we put it on enable. However, putting something into on enable, it doesn't mean that let's say we change a script and we want to see the output of it, right? So I press change something and I save it out, blah blah blah, and I save it out and I want to see whether or not we've generated our mesh. Did our mesh come through? How am I going to know? It's like, well, you just go back to Unity and you see if the mesh has appeared inside the scene window, right? That's the idea. You just look at the mesh and it should pop up in the scene window. It's like, yeah, but what state are you in? Like, if every time you change a script, does the whole thing just die and then get built up again? No, I mean, see, that's another thing. It's like you don't know what state your machine is in. Okay, so I'll show you what I mean. Okay, so look at this. Okay, so where am I? Okay, so this is the problem that I came across. Okay, public mesh filter get mesh filter bool fresh. Okay, so what I'm doing here is I say, okay, if the mesh filter is null and game object.get component mesh filter is not equal to null. Okay, so what I found was happening is that when I recompiled, right, when I changed the script and I went back into Unity to see what had changed, I was going here to get mesh, and then get mesh calls get filter, and then over here it would try to what would it do? It would yeah, okay, so what was it doing? Okay, let's just take all this stuff out. Okay, so like that. Okay, so all this function now does is says if mesh filter equals null, mesh filter equals game object.add component, right? So what happens when I do that? Well, if I go into here, what does it say? Null reference exception, object reference is not set to an instance of an object. Totally mysterious. Like, what? Here, line 38. Bam. Mesh filter.mesh equals new mesh. So now if I say trace.print, this is just my fancy, it's just fancy mesh filter equals plus mesh filter. Okay, what happens? Mesh filter equals blank. Okay, and I didn't know what the fuck was going on. Why is mesh filter not coming through? So the first thing I did was create this thing to figure out where I was. Like I would just get this error and I wouldn't understand how I got to this point. So that's why I created this trace thing. So as you can see here on the console, it says on enable, then it has this weird number, and then it says get mesh not equal null. You can see there's like indentation. Now the indentation is the actual functions, so it shows me where I am. Okay, so I don't know. I'm not suggesting that we do this, but I mean, I'm just saying this is how I figured this out. Okay, so look, at the top of onEnable, I've created this function .unity to clear console. So there's this unity. There's not two unity thingies, no, but two unity functions. What the fuck? I can't believe that resolved. Anyway, I've got this function clear console. It's bizarre. You get something called an assembly, which is a C# thing, I think. Anyway, it's weird hack to clear the console. So the first thing that happens when you go back in is a clear. So you'll see that if I save something and I go to Unity, firstly, I mean, it doesn't do anything until you focus in the window. The moment you're focused into Unity, bam, it prints out all these warning functions, and then, you know, so the funny thing is that the warning functions actually come in before onEnable gets called. You know, so clearly, like, there's like a pass. When you save the function out, the first thing that happens is the parser goes through and looks at everything and then prints out all the warnings, and then onEnable gets called and it clears all those warnings out. So that's definitely something to think about, to recognize. Okay, anyway, okay, so what I did was, for every single function I had a start and end function, right? So trace.start, onEnable, trace.end. And all that does, all start does, is it pushes something to a queue. It pushes the function name to a queue. And then every time you print something, it counts the number of functions and then adds spaces to the beginning. Right? So here at the top you see of onEnable, it says trace.start onEnable, and then it prints this random number out. It gets the mesh and it gets the mesh renderer. Right? The point of getting them is literally just to force them to save themselves out. And then it says trace.end. And then inside of get mesh, which is called here, I do the same thing. I say trace.start, get mesh, and then trace.end. And if I want to just print out a message, I say trace.print. Right? And that just keeps it all on the same level. So here, that's allowed me to see where I am. Right? Starts with onEnable, then inside of onEnable I get this number, and then inside of onEnable get mesh is called, and then inside of get mesh I see this message mesh is not equal to null. It says here mesh not equal to null. Then it calls get filter. You can see there, I can see the get filter, and then clearly inside of get filter I have this message, can't add component mesh filter to chain, because such a component is already added to the game object. And then you see here at the end, mesh filter equals. So I've added something. One last thing is when you end, you can end with a message, and then I've stuck with a convention where if you're going to return an object, you know, just end it saying what the value of the object is. So in here in mesh filter, get mesh filter, it here says mesh filter equals whatever it is. And here you can see clearly that mesh filter is not being assigned, and that's why I'm getting a null pointer reference here. But if I didn't have any of these messages, firstly I wouldn't know where this guy is being called. Okay, I lie. I would know where this is. But I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I mean, maybe all this stuff is superfluous, but it's just one way of like doing some debugging, you know, to actually have like a stack trace and all that stuff. You know, I'm really not that fond of monodevelop. I'm just using Unity++. You know, the only thing that I've lost is I don't have the IntelliSense telling me all the function things are. But to be honest, that thing annoyed the crap out of me. Kept modifying things, giving me too many options. You know, kept choosing what I was trying to type, and I wasn't actually trying to type that. You know, I didn't even press enter, or I just pressed spacebar, and it would, like, anyway, and it really clunky. Anyway, I find this much easier, a little bit more time consuming, but you just have to be more careful. Okay, so the problem was here that I was trying to add a component. I was trying to add a mesh filter component when the mesh filter is still attached. But that's what's confusing, is because here I'm checking if mesh filter is null. So clearly when the script gets when you recompile the script, all the member variables are like, they're all null, but you can't be sure that that member variable is, I mean, that's the thing. You have to think. Well, the script could have just died, but the actual component is actually still there, right? So that's why I say here, if mesh filter is null and the game object.get component mesh filter is not null, set mesh filter to the game object.get component mesh filter. Yeah. Again, now I'm just starting to think, fuck, I mean, what are the chances you don't know this? But I don't know. Anyway, in case you don't, but yeah, that's where I'm at with this. Okay. Then I have this function. Then they have this bool called fresh, and I use fresh to just force a redraw. Okay, so the idea is, I don't know if I need to do this, but I just need, we need to be able to control that the kind of creation path of everything, right? And if we're gonna test out what scripts are doing, and to be honest, I think this on enable thing changes no matter what you change. So here, so this is going to change because I changed the script. Now if I go out and I go back in again, number's still the same, nothing happened. Now if I go into some random script like slabs and I add a space and I go back in, remember this was 0.050278, I go back in, it dies. Okay, so on enable runs not just when your script changes, but when any script changes. Okay, so that's something I really want to be able to lock down, is the execution paths. It's very confusing in Unity. You don't know where you are and where things are going. But I do think that if we come up with some kind of very simple yet sensible convention for it's like what I'm doing here. I'm not saying this is the best idea, but check. Okay, so inside of mesh in chain.onEnable, I say mesh equals get mesh true, right? And true means here just means fresh. Okay, and the idea of fresh is just build it up from scratch. I don't want to know about what was there before. Just give it to me from scratch. And that was the idea of fresh. So here what I say is, inside of get mesh filter, the first thing it does is if there is a mesh filter attached, just set the variable to it. And the second thing it does is it says if the variable is null or fresh is set to true. So if fresh is set to true, don't worry about it. Then so even if this is set to something and fresh is true, then over here I say if fresh and the mesh filter is not equal to null, meaning that the only way that could be true when you start up is that there really was a mesh filter attached, destroy immediate mesh filter. So there's two destroy functions. One's just called destroy and destroy immediate, and the documentation says very explicitly in edit mode use destroy immediate. Be careful, this will destroy your objects permanently, blah blah blah. That's what they say. Okay, so if you say get mesh filter and you say true, it will destroy the mesh filter that was there and build one up from scratch, right? And again, like, why? I mean, maybe you don't need a new mesh filter. It's like, yeah, but we want to make sure that anything that we do, any changes that we make, anytime we're seeing kind of some response, we want to be able to just type into the script editor, go to Unity, and immediately see our changes, right? And we want to be sure that those changes are going to look exactly the same way when you start the game from scratch. You know, that's the problem with running it like in edit mode, is that we've got to be very kind of rigorous about making sure that the execution chain is robust. So that you don't get lost. You know, like you don't like think what the fuck's going on here. It's like, oh, okay, well this isn't set. Why is this not set? Well, okay, I guess it's because of this, and this is here. I feel like Unity is so open. It can be very easy to get lost. Um, I mean, it's a very simple system. I mean, if we stick to a system like this, I think it will be very easy to create kind of components that are very tight. Like, I'm still not sure this is as clean as it can get, but this object itself, this chain object, make sure that every time you look at it, it is you drawing it. It inside of the scene view, you're seeing exactly what it's going to render if you plop it into. If you're running it in the game, no matter what, it doesn't care if it's in edit mode, it doesn't care if it's in game mode, it doesn't care, if it will draw it from the ground up every single time, when it needs to. It's not dependent on, I mean, that's the thing about, edit mode, is that, you don't know what state you're in, in fact, with all of Unity, you don't know what state you're in. So yeah, that's that. So it looks very complicated, but that's what getMeshFilter does. getMeshRenderer does exactly the same thing. So I'm thinking maybe there could be like some global function or approach that we could use for objects where you just want to force them to exist, and always kind of be created from scratch and keep the execution path the same. But it does exactly the same thing. We'll destroy it if it's there, if you pass in fresh. And the only time you need to pass in fresh is really the beginning. And then finally, this mesh thing. Yeah, so I'm assuming the only reason it's not rendering here is because there's no triangles here. So if I put down triangles, I don't really know how to do that. Triangles. What do triangles look like? Generate triangles. Okay, so a bunch of ints. Triangles. Let's see if this works. Okay, so I'm creating 10 vertices. How about I make 1, 2, 3, 4 vertices? How about 4? 1, 2, 3, 4. With 4 vertices, I should be able to make. Okay. So mesh.triangles equals new int, right? Oh, right. New int. You just initialize it with whatever you want. For initialize like this. It's like node 1, 2. Right. Triangles with the vertices. Source mesh.triangles.length. Total slabs. I understand. Vertices. Okay, well let's just say there's 2 triangles, there's 6 vertices. Now let's go 1, 2, 3. Good. See what that does. Don't really know what I'm doing. Okay, does that work?
Boom. Okay, so it says shader wants texture coordinates, but the mesh doesn't have them. Okay, at least it didn't die. Oh, is that a triangle? No. Yes. Ooh, it looks like something. Okay. But as you can see, I mean, my goal has been satisfied. So my goal is simply to go into a script, edit some kind of render part of the script or some functionality of the script. You know, put a enter here. I mean, this is all random. You know, so I can go back in here, click, and it will have updated itself. Boom. You see, so now it's updated. It's now a different thing, and it's updated with the script, and it's followed the execution path. It followed the creation path. It's like procedural. I mean, that's what I'm going for here. I want this to be procedural, so that we don't have to worry about how everything ties together. You can just focus on one small aspect of it, and you can go back and forth between the script and the actual window, and you'll be able to see exactly what's happening. And here you can see the execution path, where this message comes from. Shader wants texture coordinates. Well, I don't really understand this shader stuff. Maybe I could just give it a material. Let's see what that does. Give you material. Can I control Z that? There we go. Okay. Cool. Hopefully this has been somewhat helpful to you. So hopefully maybe just knowing how, you know, where I'm at. I don't know. It's kind of embarrassing, but yeah. I mean, but I do think that the approach that I'm taking here is different from is like a new suggestion, you know, to kind of lock it all down, make sure all the execution paths work. So yeah, so you can just edit a few lines, go back and see exactly what they did, and not, yeah. Yeah. So I hope you see what I'm going to do here. So I'm going to create functions that just take what you've done here in your track mesher and just do exactly the same thing here inside of the mesh, right? And then here it's going to say if mesh equals null, then get it from the mesh filter, and if you're running fresh, then if fresh, then it's just going to regenerate the mesh. It's going to generate the mesh, right? Using some shit like this, like some nomad shit. Anyway, okay, I'm gonna stop talking now. It's almost an hour. Cool. I'm gonna commit this and send you the vid. Cheers, dude.